There you go. You can lay down and watch it.
Well, I don't lay down, I sit.
Okay, welcome. I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. The first item we have on the agenda is the assignment for requests for council action. We have several for the finance. We have 23-115, Madonna Miao Fix additional funding request, 23-116, bids for the 2023 broadcasting and web streaming head-end video cable TV, 23-117 pickleball courts for the ARPA funds, 23-118 donate PCs to Madison City Schools, 23-119 expenditure over $20,000 for Intertech PSI Engineering, 23-120 amendment to the JED contract Southtown LLC, 23-121 bids for the Rocky River stabilization at Huffman Cunningham Park, ARPA, 23-122 courthouse lease. The next item we have is 19-175. This is vacating city right-of-way from the church property. Patrick, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. Council actually discussed this 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. Previously, there's back in the 80s, the church dedicated a portion of their property perpendicular to Route 18 as public right-of-way in order to be able to get, I think it's special education vans or buses or what?
It's actually a modular unit. It's the trailer that's.
Trailer, okay. Because they had to do that to meet state rules regarding public educational monies. Well, that apparently has gone away, and they would like to get that property back. So as we discussed 3.5 years ago, the method to do that is through a vacation plat, and it's a bit of an expense. They'll have to hire a surveyor, an engineer to put it together. They wanted us to come back. Back then, we did tell them, council was in general agreement of it, so go ahead and prepare the plat, and we will approve it when it gets back to us. That's been 3.5 years. I think they just wanted to make sure, they haven't done anything yet, but they have revisited the issue. I think they wanted to make sure that was still on the table for them to proceed with spending the money for a plat that our council would be agreeable to it once it was submitted.
Thanks. I guess the question is, why would we want to have a public right-of-way going through a middle of a church? I mean, we'd have to maintain it and everything, so, and the liability would, even though we have other sovereign immunity issues, we'd have to still be responsible for it, so why do we want it?
I don't think there'd be any public use for it. I think at the time, the city accepted it just to basically do the church a favor, do the school a favor. And now that they don't need that, I don't know that there's any benefit to the city to maintain it.
I agree. Do anybody have any comments on that?
And just to be clear, this is St. Francis, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, all right, okay.
It's
Well, I guess you could still tell them, I think we're all in agreement, we're okay to vacate it. I mean, I don't think we have to take a vote on it or anything. I think you just have to tell them to move forward and obtain the vacation plat or prepare it and submit it back to us so we can vote on it. I would assume your office will review the vacation plat.
We would review it, but it would be ultimately council would have to accept it and approve it.
Okay. Okay, is that, everybody's in agreement still? Correct. All right, moving on to 23-113, increase PO 2023-930, the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railway. Patrick, is this you?
John, me.
Oh, you?
This is a little goofy. You already approved it once. But at the time that you approved it, the new ordinance increasing the amounts that Finance Committee has the authority to approve hadn't taken effect yet. So we need to approve it again.
And it's, the total amount of the increase of the PO is $34,450, right?
That's the increased amount, right, the
Okay.
total.
Anybody have any questions?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next one we have is 23-114, increase of PO 2023-840 for Rocco Masonry. Mr. Pacoli?
Thank you, Mr. President. So we have this contractor who helps us and takes care of placing concrete in certain areas in the right-of-way, aprons, sidewalks, the streets when needed on an emergency basis. We started out with a $10,000 PO. Since that time, we've discovered, since we increased the PO, we have a few more areas that have been identified as needing replaced. These are areas where there's a storm sewer manhole in the driveway, and then the area is collapsed around it, which is a safety hazard. So we'd like to increase this PO and then have these budding concrete failures taken care of.
Any questions?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 23-115, Medina Meow Fix additional funding request. This came from Mr. Land.
Thank you, Mr. President. A number of years ago, we started to look at issues regarding wild animals and nuisance. And what came up during that early discussion was we had included cats and dogs. We became aware through really the information was provided by residents who informed us in a way that we didn't really know what we were talking about, and we could not include cats and dogs in an ordinance that restricted wild animals, feeding wild animals. So out of that whole issue, we worked with the residents to create a TNR program, recognized that there was an issue in not only in town, not only in the city of Medina, but really a wider issue, because animals, whether they're wild or domestic, don't really know boundaries. Realized that there was a bigger issue, a larger issue than we were in any way aware of. So we worked for, I don't know how many months, we worked for a number of months, put together a program, a TNR program, created a nonprofit. And in that process, the city donated some money as a pilot program to see how it would work. And we based it on, I thought it was being based on primarily somewhat like the work we do with the SPCA, recognizing that there's an issue and it can be addressed in a way that really, by us putting in a little bit of money, it saves us a lot of money. And the program itself has taken off to such an extent that it has become, people from other counties have contacted this group to find out how they created the program, because they want to create a program like this. And then the individuals that created the nonprofit and established the program have begun to do work outside of the city limits in other communities, successfully in other communities, because the issue exists there as well. And there is no paid employee in this group. This is all volunteers that do this. And the numbers that they have dealt with, whether it's, trapping feral cats, having them spayed or neutered, trapping feral cats, having them spayed and neutered and put back where they were if they're going to stay feral, kittens spayed and neutered, fostered out to homes. The numbers are staggering, and the work that's being done, and particularly when you look at that this work is all being accomplished by volunteers, by folks just working. And so at this point, with this many months into the program and the success that they've had, it makes sense to me that we continue to look at it as the pilot program that we said at the time it would be, look at the success, and again, help provide funding until the group is completely on their feet and at some point, I would suppose, on their feet and able to do the funding themselves. And because I don't have all the figures in my head, I did ask some of the people there that are head of the group if they could come and speak and give you those figures so that you can look at them while you're making your consideration.
Okay, I guess first I'd like to ask council, any comments from council? Anybody have any observation? Danny?
Yeah. Again, Carrie and your group, I've just been so impressed with the work your group's been able to accomplish, and it is a benefit to the city and to the county, and I realize that. The only thing I'm struggling with is, since you do go outside the city boundaries.
Yes, of course we do, because the Stevenson Foundation, that's a Chippewa
Mhm.
resident, having that match, we did over 270 cats countywide.
Right.
So having that being a match, that's not city, but the city itself, we did 245 cats plus 56 this year, so that's 301 cats that we have essentially taken in.
Right.
In United City, which is the largest.
Doesn't count.
That doesn't count.
Well over 100 kittens that we
Yes.
grabbed.
Right. And like I said, I really appreciate everything, that the Stevens Foundation and the city did give you $10,000 initially. I would just, before I can make an informed decision, I would like to, if you could email us, all of us.
Yes, I definitely have the numbers.
Well, not just the numbers, but the municipalities, townships, and villages, how much they're kicking in.
Definitely. Well, they're not going to kick in. Medina City is the pilot program on this.
Mhm.
Right now, I do have Rittman signed on. Rittman came in, since they're a little piece of Medina County, the city manager of Rittman gave me $5,000, and essentially, we're at 112 caps right now. I've gone through the $5,000. They're, even with all the problems in Rittman, they're coming up with another $2,000 because they don't want the program to end.
Right.
Essentially, they're overrun with cats. I have a trapper there who's trapping cats and taking them in out of her own volunteer status.
Mhm.
The only thing I could send her is some gas cards and some flea medicine.
Right.
It's pretty, I just want you to know the impact that these volunteers are providing because they don't get paid.
And I totally appreciate that, I
Well, no,
do.
but I want everyone to understand this. Mike and I have taken dogs off the street that our dog warden, for 6 months, we had a dog on the street with a luxated patella that I don't know what our dog warden was doing. Mike and I trapped the dog within 4 days. After 6 months, when I found out that this dog had been running amok, I raised $1,000 to get this dog help. I mean, I shouldn't have to do this as a volunteer. I want to know what our paid people are doing in this county. Because quite frankly, we've helped 2,000 animals. I would like to continue doing that, but for me to get a grant and not have this be a pilot program any longer, it's going to take me 3 to 5 years to be substantially noted that I am a 501c3, a legitimate 501c3, because anyone could become a 501c3. But showing that you've been doing this year after year successfully, which is what I am showing, every time that I apply for a grant, every time I ask someone for some money, and I am working with a lot of community members in Medina, the Busy Witch, I'm working with Main Street Medina this coming weekend. I really put our name out there. I do a lot of advertising. I'm very dynamic because I have a big sales background. I am disabled though. I've had 9 brain tumors, and I am a disabled woman doing this. I'd like to see some more people who are paid doing a little bit more. So for me, I did ask for ARPA funds 2 years ago. I was turned down. Now I'm seeing we're doing a pickleball court, but listen, my whole problem is the parks are getting these ARPA funds. Well, I would like some ARPA funds because quite frankly, I can't tell you how many times I've had calls from the Greenwood Park and all these parks where these animals are now being tossed into that were emotional support animals. These cats that were brought in to help people after COVID is now being tossed into the park. Well, I would like some ARPA funds. I would like to keep this going with some ARPA funds because they're out there. I would like some. I've asked for them. Jim Johnson in Massillon, he's running his program because when I spoke to Massillon 2 years ago, they're using the ARPA funds now to support their animal management program. Up to $500 for a sick cat goes into Ultra Clinic, and they support all of the TNRs in the city of Massillon with ARPA funds. You can talk to Jim, because I talked to him in great detail about running the animal management program in their city, and that's what they do with ARPA funds. So I can give you every number, I can give you every stat because I have it, because I do my homework, but Massillon's doing a great job. Rittman's doing a great job. They're pulling money out of the air right now. Medina City has the money, and we have ARPA funds. I would like to see some of it used in the right areas.
And I totally understand and appreciate where you're coming from.
I appreciate you guys, because without you, I couldn't have started this in the first place.
And-
Without the help of Bill and Jessica, all of you getting behind me, I couldn't have done this.
Right. And obviously you have not went to, and I understand why you haven't went because of the time constraints and your disability. But for the city of Medina, and like I said, you don't know how grateful all of us are that the work that you've done in the city of Medina, and I don't think very many, I mean, we'd always have some, but very many residents would disagree with the funds that we initially gave you, and if we decide to give you more funds. Since you are spreading out outside the perimeters of the city of Medina, I would feel more comfortable if maybe just by a letter, if you could contact the other municipalities, townships, and villages and ask them for some financial support, I would feel better about giving more money to this, because again, there's tons of 503Cs out there that are not doing the work that you're doing. Trust me, I understand that. But it just makes me feel more comfortable. So,
Every penny that the city of Medina gave was spent on
In the
cats
city?
in the city limits.
We
No
have,
money went outside the county. We've done that
with city funds
with funds that
only,
we've raised outside the city.
right.
So
But-
every penny the city has given has gone to
To
cats
city
in the
only.
city.
Well, yeah, I think that's what Denny's saying. If you could provide us that information and show us.
We will.
Yeah, that's all I'm
I think that's what
asking
he's
for.
saying. I think that's what he's saying.
We have approached Wadsworth. It's just kind of strange because Wadsworth did allocate $10,000 to us. We're not really sure what's going on in Wadsworth right now. I will be approaching the mayor. I know she's up for election this year too. I will be approaching her in the next week because I talked to Matt Hiscock many times and we were allocated $10,000. We haven't seen that. Now I have gone over and over and over with them on where our funds are. They actually had my vice president of Medina Neophix fill out a 1099, which we're not workers, okay? We are not tax workers, we are not 1099 workers. But she did it, we followed their whole program and their protocol. We actually had to front the money and get paid back from them monthly. We agreed to the whole program, and then we weren't allocated funds, which is kind of strange. Again, I'm following up with them. I've approached Brunswick many times. That's why I've gone to municipalities very separately, because I am pushing them. I'm pushing Brunswick, and I will keep pushing Brunswick. I can go in front of the commissioners, which I will. I mean, I have no problem doing that, because the numbers are there. I mean, we have a substantial problem. The SPCA can only do so much because they don't work with feral cats. So I do work in tandem with the SPCA. We do have a farm program together. We do work, in pretty much in tandem. If a cat's friendly, I call them. If a cat's feral, they call us. But the difference being is they get paid, we don't.
Yeah.
But I do have trappers in Medina City, actually quite a few. I have them in Chippewa. We have Chippewa trappers here, who work with, all the people in Chippewa. I have people in Brunswick. I do have people stationed now in a lot of different areas because I needed to. Because it is, Medina City is, to me, since I live in Medina City is my gold standard. Medina City actually had the most cats. The 240 number is well over Brunswick, well over, all these other areas. Rittman's kind of a mess. There's been 100 cats that have been taken in, but Medina City was by far 30% more than Brunswick alone. But right now, one really positive thing that I can say, the SPCA called me and said, we don't have any cats at the pet store. And I said, what? They're like, this is the first time ever that we cannot fill our pet store. I had to bring cats in from Rittman to fill the pet store.
Oh, jeez.
Because we had so many cats taken off the street.
Yeah.
And you know what? I want to put them, I want to put all of them out of business. I don't want the pet stores to have cats anymore, because if they don't have cats, that means we did our job as volunteers. We stopped the cycle of these darn cats being on the street. I mean, you know that I'm allergic to cats. You know that I'm fighting 10 weeks of toxoplasmosis pneumonia from cats. I essentially cannot be around them. I don't want cats in my yard. I hate to say it, but I don't, because they make me sick. I just want to stop this. This is a terrible cycle, and it's a people cycle. It really is a people problem. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'll give you every number you need, but by you guys standing behind us and Medina City being the gold standard, it makes such a huge difference to all these other places, and I'm able to say Medina City stood behind us, so what are you going to do? It means a ton with me being a resident here.
Reggie?
I'm an animal lover. I love cats. I don't have any animals at this time.
We can give you some.
Thanks. But I will say this. I have been a recipient offhand from your services in the aspect of a few years ago, my neighborhood was overrun by cats. They were everywhere. They were on my property. They were spraying all over my yard. I would wake up in the middle of the night with cats fighting outside my bedroom window. It was horrendous to listen to. So I do support your efforts. How much that is, I don't know right now, but I agree with Denny that the numbers that show what you're getting from the other communities in the county and what they're willing to support, because you're right, this is a people problem, and it's not just a people problem here in the city of Medina. It's a people problem everywhere. And if other communities are willing to step up too, you know, this would really benefit all of us.
And thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also like to see the income and expenses on the fundraisers that you've had, the number of them, number of attendees, et cetera. Thank you.
Carrie, I was just going to ask you, you've mentioned 3 to 5 years. Do you think then, if we fund it this year, at least 2 to 3 more years is what?
I totally do. I told Rick the same thing when I went from Medina Harbor. I said, listen, I don't plan on bombarding you for money. That is not what I want to do. I don't plan on coming to city council and asking for money after that. This should be able to sustain itself when we're able to get large grants. I have gone after a Ohio grant since we started, and they're like, Carrie, you know, we cannot help you right now, but I will stay on their heels because I know they award a lot of money. I will keep doing that because, well, A, that's just who I am, but B, if I don't stay on the heels of these grants that are pretty substantial and our numbers speak for themselves, I know that we'll be awarded grants. I mean, we have small businesses in Medina that'll raise a check for $500. You know, the Oddfellows gave us a check for $500. You know, I have small, you know, insurance companies giving us a check. I have, you know, businesses supporting us. I know by the presence, by what we have created, I know we'll get support, but when the grants, when we're able to get that notoriety that we have been around for 3 to 5 years, I know there's grants out there. And I know we're going to get them. That's not even in question because we, you know, right now on social media, and you almost hate saying Facebook, you almost have to have Facebook, but Facebook is a huge, huge presence for us. I manage our Facebook page, I manage the Medina Meowfix page. I have over 1,500 followers right now. That's a huge thing. So when we just had our first fundraiser outdoors because with my illness, I don't do a lot of outdoor things, I do a lot of online. Bill was there. It was packed. I mean, we had over 175 people there. It was insane. For me, the online fundraisers, you know, I might bring $5,000 in. But I did a small bourbon fundraiser for Christmas last year. Just on those 3 bottles of bourbon, I brought in almost $3,000. So if we're doing these small little fundraisers on Facebook and we target an audience, I can't believe the money I can bring in. And it saves me because my energy is a little low. You know, I'm getting blood transfusions every 3 weeks now. It does save me that outside presence. But I did think this one was very necessary to say, hey, we're here, we're in our town, we're in Medina City, and we did have standing room only. And it was nice because Bill was there, Mike Kovac was there, the city of Rittman came. It was nice having those people there and show up. It was a huge fundraiser, and we did bring in, you know, we cleared $8,000. So I was happy with that. I would have liked to have cleared more, but, you know, I was happy with $8,000.
Sure.
So yes, I do think the social media presence is amazing, and the more followers you get, the more people. I know the grants will happen.
Let me ask you a question. I guess with the TNR program, coming back to our previous meeting, I know Bill mentioned something about, you know, once you catch them, neuter them, and release them, your population drops dramatically, which is great, and I think you've shown that or just mentioned that. But when you keep trapping them, do you trap ones that are already been trapped and neutered and released?
Well, this is the thing. So when we trap a cat, we take part of the ear off, okay? So when their left ear is cut, you'll know that cat has been through the program. So when our trappers see a cat that has part of the ear severed, we let that cat go.
Okay, that's what I wanted to, how that worked.
But what we also have done, because I do work with, and this is so funny, you never think I would work with them, I work with Kitten Crazy now, a lot. Kitten Crazy has taken in probably the last 30 of my cats. If they're friendly, I sign them up with Kitten Crazy, SPCA, other groups that can take these healthy, friendly cats in off the street, and I'm not putting them back out there. Can I I do it with all of them. Sadly, I can't, but if the cat is unhealthy, I will euthanize it. I do not put sick animals back on our streets. If the cat is incredibly ill, it is euthanized. I do have cats right now in Medina that we've been working with for 6 weeks. Every day we go out there because they had kittens underneath the house that's gonna be torn down. Well, we finally got the kittens out of there. They went right into rescue. The SPCA is assuming them. But I have 5 cats that we have to move. I have a barn taking all 5 of the cats. I'll leukemia test those cats. They will move to a barn. But if those cats are leukemia positive and they are feral, I will euthanize the cats. I will not put anyone else's animals at risk with leukemia. FIV is a different type of illness. That doesn't bother me as much, but leukemia is transmittable and spreadable. So not only do I run this program, but I run it with the shelter management background in my mind. I am not someone who doesn't understand the concept of a sick animal. The animal is euthanized and not put back on the street. We have taken hundreds and hundreds of kittens off the street. 4 months, they're breeding. 4 months, because since they're not wild animals that have a nocturnal clock, they turn off, like rabbits do, deer. These cats breed 12 months out of the year. So in the wintertime, they're having babies. Hence, we have that cycle happening all year round. I want them off the streets. You know, I don't want them on the streets.
Now, let me, I know when we started out, we did it, we donated the money or allocated the money to the SPCA because you weren't a 501c3 yet. What is the ongoing relationship? Because I know that, you know, we donate to the SPCA every year because they handle things that, for across the board, that we don't handle day to day here at the city. But how do you coordinate with the SPCA now? Because do you work with them? Or are you separate from them? Because in my mind, it seems like you should be part of them somehow because that's what they do.
We're not, because they don't work with feral cats at all. Tracy is no longer the standing director. She's not gonna be working with our funds. I do have an accountant that, is a very good accountant that manages our funds, and she is our financial person. Her name's Sheila Underwood, and she manages all of Medina Alpix funds. I have 1,000,000% faith with her. She has worked with the SPCA for years, and we are really fiscally responsible. I will say that. I'm very tight, so is she. So any of our money that is allocated, her and I are the people who are, that work with financial.
It's funny that you bring it up. I think we are too, but.
Yeah. I thought you'd be here to know that.
We-
I do put some money into advertising, I will say that, but I think you have to,
But not the city.
yeah, never, no, it's always money that I raise. But I think you also have to spend a little bit to make a little bit, so I do.
What it seems like from what I'm hearing here is if you can give us some information, I think people want to see that. And of course, once you trap, neuter, and release the cats, the ongoing, going forward, unless, as you mentioned, people have emotional support animals or for any other reason, throw them out and they're not spayed or neutered already, that continues the problem. But the bulk of the issue, it sounds like we've addressed with the 300 and some cats total. You know, there's a big bulk of cats that are no longer going to be breeding, or be able to breed, and the number should drop dramatically in a hurry, because they, as you mentioned, I don't know how many litters a year a cat could have. 4, so that would be a lot, as far as the exponential, you know, having cats.
And we're more at a point now where we're still getting the numbers down, but we have to maintain it, because if you stop doing it,
They jump up.
within a year or two, you're gonna be right back to where you were, because other cats come in, other cats will start breeding, and then you'll be right back to where you were.
I would like, actually, these colonies, I'd like them to start dying out naturally. Troy works at TrueFit. He called us, there was 10 cats there, breeding and breeding. And we,
I started with one female cat 4 years ago.
and
I probably fed 40 cats a better in my career.
we went and cleared them up.
She cleared all, I had 11 to go, and I finally got over. SPCA would not help me, Mission Impossible would not help me. She could have, in 3 days, got all 11 cats.
And we essentially cleared them up. And there's no more kittens there.
And then one morning I was out feeding them, I seen a little sick kid, so I called her again. She said, if you can catch him again, bring him down and we'll take care of it.
And we did.
We did give him antibiotics for 10 days, and now little kittens living in our house.
This man, Montague, I mean, it was bad.
Yeah, we're on Sturbridge, and I contacted everybody here probably. Yeah, just like this gentleman said, SPCA wouldn't help, city wouldn't help, nobody would help. These cats, we always knew we had cats in the neighborhood. Lockdown, March of 2000, I'm home. All day long, these cats screaming. I sent pictures to members of council. All these Tom have a female under the car day and night. Couldn't walk, we're on Sturbridge up to Ken Cleveland, cats up there. Montview, couldn't walk down. Sidewalks littered. Weed trap. I'm one of the ones I caught one with the ear clip. But
You
I-
tried though, you did a good job.
Yeah, we've, I can't remember how I met your husband, but
I
I'm
called you,
glad
you were really mad.
Yeah,
You were mad. You had wrote the mayor, you had wrote everyone, you were
Oh,
mad.
yeah,
So I made
yeah, I
sure
mean,
that I called you.
And my thing was, this is a people problem. We had hoarder, we think, cause problems, conflicts between the neighbors, cat people versus other people. I know people were destroying these animals on their own. Personally, if people don't know the difference between a feral cat and a stray cat, these were not strays. These were vicious animals. You know, large, all the tail down, muscular. Yeah, it's really cleaned up the neighborhood.
Well, that's good. I mean, I guess to round this up again, if you can provide that information so people can look at what the initial $10,000, because my guess is too, it's not $10,000. So everybody wants to look at that and see. My direction would really be to try to cooperate with the SPCA, because they have a better organization structure that they should be able to take this on somehow, and I don't understand why they don't, but I don't understand it.
Feral, the word feral. They won't even, when I actually called them about a raccoon with distemper, they wouldn't send out a humane officer, and I don't want to sound like a jerk, but our police wouldn't come out either. He killed it. This should not be a volunteer thing, killing a raccoon with distemper on the railroad tracks
Right.
down by the park. That's not something we should be doing at all. And if this raccoon would have bit somebody, they would have gotten distemper. These are issues that, we're called as feral people, the people that come and pick the feral cats. When I talked to the SPCA about helping with the feral cat the other day, they're like, oh, well, we don't want to get any of our employees hurt. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, but it's okay if my volunteer gets hurt. This is where the lines are a little bit blurry, because it's okay if a volunteer goes out and works with a feral cat, because why? They don't have any more training than a humane officer. Actually, they have a lot less.
Right.
But we have been working with these animals. We are trying to, clean the problem up. But my greater issue with Medina City coming forward, which I haven't had 1 second to even work on it, is getting into the school system. I'm trying to find an education coordinator to go in and educate the elementary school kids on how to take care of the animal going forward. I think kids should know that animals are a 15-year commitment, and not to throw them out, and maybe do better than what their parents might be teaching them. That's part of something I would like to roll out. And I also think that law enforcement should know a little bit better too. And when there is an animal with distemper, they should know how to go put that animal down and not rely on someone like us to go help them.
Well, I guess you're right. I'm not sure why the SPCA doesn't get involved more. And Paul, maybe you have the relationship with the SPCA. You could try to get some information and find out, why can't they start adopt this kind of program that they've started to continue it, because they have a bigger structure, of course.
Oh, we would love it. Hey, if the SPCA wanted to take over,
Well, that's what I want to find out, is I don't understand, I know their purpose, but their purpose is probably animals in general, and I don't understand.
Responsibility that they don't want their volunteers getting injured by the feral cats.
Well, they can get injured by picking up an alligator that they have to pick up, so I don't understand. That's why I want him to ask, because I know there's been alligators and snakes and all those fun animals that we have, so I don't
Some
understand
of
it.
these houses are really bad that they go into.
Right.
Truthfully, if they wanted to adopt this program and take it over, I have 100 traps. I would gladly give them everything, and I'm done.
Well, yeah, I just want to find out why they're not, what their plan is, because that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Because as you know, as a city, if we keep giving money to a 501c3, I have 10 other 501c3s that have been knocking on our door saying, I want money too. And it's like, well, I'm not going to give it to you. Then they'll be complaining, and then it's just a vicious cycle. That's kind of our issue that we have. We understand the good we're doing. That's why we gave the money to start it off, and that's how I looked at it. And hopefully the volunteers, which sounds like you have great fundraisers, maybe it's not enough to cover it, but I don't know where the money's coming from, the township residents, the city residents, or Wadsworth, or wherever the money's coming from. But that's how I look at the program, because that's what we do, is try to initiate something, but we don't want to adopt something, so to speak. So
Yeah, I
that's
don't
kind of,
want to adopt it either.
Yeah,
That's why
right.
when Bill said pilot program, that's when I said 3 years, it was in my mind for us to get grants. And I knew that started.
Right.
I knew that I wouldn't be able to get a big grant.
understood.
But I do try. I am trying. I know I couldn't service, there's 25,000 people in the island.
Yes.
I-
And there's a lot of dog lovers too, but
Yeah,
yes.
there is. I love dogs. We helped 3, and we
Right.
brought them in, and we have
Right.
Okay.
I get it.
Well, if you can get us those numbers, then we can make an
That'd be
informed
very- Yeah,
decision.
that'll be very helpful, because then we'll
John?
bring it back up at the next finance meeting
Bill's
then,
got
too.
something.
Yes, Bill?
Yeah, I think that's important that we kind of stick to the subject at hand, because the subject at hand actually isn't melding this group into the SPCA, which we know generally that is not going to happen. They weren't interested before, they're not interested now, for a variety of reasons that are really pretty clear to most of us. And I think, Denny's, Councilman Simpson's suggestion about now we've gotten a lot of information from you, kind of an oral argument, very helpful, I think, to kind of tell us what the issues have been, how hard you're working. And I think Councilman Simpson's suggestion that, you come in with some numbers for us and we can take a look at it. But John, I think it's also important that if we're saying you need to come in with the figures so that we know how much to give you, not to say ahead of time that it's not going to be $10,000, because if we want to look at what they're doing, I guess then we would make that decision. We're not going, I don't think it's appropriate to make the decision ahead of time that we're not going to give
Well,
them that
true, but I
money.
mean, we know that after a year and a half to 2 years, it's 66% of the problem's gone.
No, because it's not it's like snow plowing.
Well, no.
It can be 100% gone. When it comes down on Monday, on Wednesday, it's 100% gone, but if it will snow again, and then the problem is back. And so if you have one cat, and the cat reproduces 4 times a year, then the problem comes back. That's why you have to continue, it's kind of like going to the dentist, It's painful, but you keep going, because otherwise you're going to be there.
Well, no, I know
Again.
what you're saying, and I think we talked about the cat programs before, about people who let cats out should be punished, but we had an outcry of people coming here saying, you can't do that. It's like, well, maybe we could, and maybe we should think about that too, that if you're caught throwing a cat out to the wild, so maybe you get fined. Maybe you.
But we don't have, but we don't,
Dog out, you're gonna, the cops gonna be
Yeah.
right there with the ticket.
we don't have a program like that.
I know,
though.
because the only way to enforce that program is they license cats, and that was a big.
But there is no,
deal.
we
Nobody
tried to,
licensed a cat.
before
I know.
you were born, I think, we tried to license cats, and it was explained to us that you cannot license a cat because people simply will say, it's not my cat. Cats are really hard to identify.
Yeah, right.
Unless you want to insist that every cat owner has their cat chipped, and then you could take and improve it. And I don't know what kind of enforcement that would be, but I think, I think council's review of this is important, and I appreciate all your comments, and
Yeah, so if you
we'll
should
look forward
email
to that
that to
information.
Kathy or to us or whomever, and it would be circulated. But we-
Thank you very much.
We appreciate that, yeah, we can look at it. All right, okay, so now we're moving on to, it would be next finance meeting. And now we're moving on to 23-116, it's the bids for the 2023 broadcasting and web streaming head and video. And is this Jared? Yes, it is. Jared, you're in the back room there.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me for being inside the booth here as I talk, but multitasking. Okay, there we go. This is something that wasn't on our 5-year plan. We're hoping our head end is what allows us to play back on our government channel, on our educational access channel, as well as our web streaming to people watch video on demand on the web later. This service is brought to my attention. The company let us know they are no longer backing their software for our head end anymore. So where I was projecting this maybe to get us by another 5 or 6 years is going to move us forward to having to look at new venues and opportunities to host and be able to handle our head end capabilities. So that's why you see this out for bid now. The cost is high enough that we need to send it out to bid. The good news is it will move us forward. It will allow us with video on demand capability. It would allow us to live stream the channel also on the website. There are options. I don't want to put one vendor over another since we're looking at multiple vendors that could bid for this. Capabilities to tie in with the clerk, tying in the minutes from each meeting with the videos, being able to sync those up together. Also looking at closed captioning to get us more ADA compliant on the website. And also having OTT capability, which is over the top. So all those cord cutters that now have Roku's, Apple TVs, would also be able to see Medina TV on those apps as well. So that's what we're going to move forward doing with putting these out to bid.
And I know I have to say this because it's all coming out. I mean, how does this relate in the future year or two when AI is involved? I mean, how does this impact that? Do we have to look at a vendor that's going to be able to support that? Is there something going to happen where it's going everywhere? I was involved in it already at a meeting, but what's going to happen? Do we have any idea?
Yeah, some of that's still hard to predict, but I know that the biggest impact will be on that closed captioning, that ADA compliance. Usually you have to have, similar to a court stenographer that would do that, and you're paying a human being to do that, where the AI is getting more intuitive and being able to discern those certain words that are be particular to a city. So, of course, you always hear people, if you talk to someone outside of Medina, they always butcher the name Medina. That would then be intuitive to the AI, and other street names would be another example of that, where AI would become more beneficial with that.
And that would be part of the bid then, or how does that, or do you know that yet or no?
Most of the companies include those firmware upgrades that would allow for that moving forward. That is something we can actually include as I put the bid spec together, or the bid quote for this together.
Okay. And you said you're going to use carry forward funds, and I know you had difficulty. I know you've been saving your money to try to keep the program going on for many, many more years. And there's a funding issue coming up that we're trying to continue to solve, and we solved it a little bit, but I don't think it's been solved 100%.
Correct, and this is something that basically is the backbone to keep us going still with Armstrong, being able to do that, and then also give us that web presence, so if eventually there is a cord cut or something happens, we can continue the services we're doing. So as far as the cost goes, this is something that we would need.
Okay. Understood. Any questions for Jared?
Move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The next one we have is a 23-117 expenditure to Medina City Schools for the pickleball courts, ARPA. Jansen?
Thank you, Mr. President. Last October, we had a public properties meeting and discussed a couple options to construct pickleball courts in the city. And we decided to move forward with a collaborative project with Medina City Schools to build 6 pickleball courts at AI Root Middle School. The Finance Committee voted to move forward on that October 24th. The project is currently underway, and we have a firm number now on the cost for the project after the unknown soil conditions were corrected. So respectfully requesting a purchase order for the 50% of the project in the amount of $118,891.50 payable to the Medina City Schools. The emergency clause is requested so that we can pay them as soon as possible as construction is underway. And just for the public's benefit, we had 3 options. One was to repair an existing court with a temporary fix that would have lasted less than 5 years. The second option was to install 4 brand-new courts at Ray Millard Park. And option 3, to collaborate with the schools, had the largest benefit for both the city and the schools because it can be used as an educational component as well as for the public when school is not in session or the courts are not used and get 2 additional ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shields?
2 things I did want to add too. I know I saw your look, Gary, but I will tell you that the Pickleball Association has been organized for probably 10+ years, and it's probably the #1 request we get that you've got to do something about pickleball in Medina.
I bet you
Yeah. Do. And as you know, I was willing to support it.
Asking for five,
Yeah,
but
so,
this is a couple $100,000 of ARPA
Yeah.
funds. I only asked for a little tiny chunk of
I
that.
get it. I just,
10 years.
Mr. President, can we stay on task here with the pickleball courts?
so, but yeah, it's obviously, I'm going to need to abstain too because it goes to my employer, so.
Understood. And I understand, yeah, we've been working on this for a while, and I can't believe every time I turn on the TV, there's a pickleball tournament. I know. I still haven't played it, but it seems interesting, for sure. Any other questions?
Move to approve?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Oh, any abstentions? I
Abstain.
keep forgetting you always.
And that
abstain.
includes the emergency clause.
Yes, that's correct.
Second includes the emergency clause?
Yes, that's correct. 23-118, we have a donation or donate our PCs to the Medina City Schools for the IT. And I guess this would be
Darren?
Derek? Oh, that's right, he's here.
Thank you, Mr. President. In our continued partnership with Medina City Schools, we have 7 older Dell PCs that are out of use for us here at the city. We'd like to donate them to the schools. It's a good time for them as they're going into their break and they can get these up, and they've got lots and lots of computers, so this works in labs, et cetera. We do remove the hard drives so they don't get them with any data that any of the city would have done, and we dispose of those hard drives, so they get just the tower and the shell. They put in their own fresh hard drives, reload the operating system, and then use them at will with the students.
Sure. Mr. Shields?
No, Bill just asked me to, and I know we've offered him to Buckeye too, because part of the city's in Buckeye School District that,
We do not call them direct. We usually go through like Procopius over there at the school.
okay. But I think we have given them to Buckeye Schools as well.
Oh, you guys do. Once they go to you, I don't believe we have directly from the city, but once they've gone to the schools, it's possible that they've redeployed.
Okay, and maybe that's some of ours then that we passed them on. I know because
maybe.
Buckeye Schools are still within the city of Medina limits, so.
Okay.
It's true.
But because I also work for the schools, and it's all good, but just to avoid any appearance of a conflict, I'm going to abstain on this one too.
Sure. Any other questions?
One clarity, Darren, thank you for doing this. You said 7, but the request says 8. What's the count?
Yeah, I'm looking at the spreadsheet, and I saw that as well, and I only see 7 on there.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with the 7 because I've
So
got those serialized.
We'll modify it to 7
Yeah,
then?
yeah.
Okay. All right,
If there
thank
is one extra, we'll hold that one back.
Okay.
you.
Move to approve with the modification.
Second with the modification?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Motion carries. 23-119, expenditure for $20,000 to Intertech PSI Engineering. Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. President. And actually, my request was for 30,000.
No, you said 20 only, you're not getting any more.
It says 30.
I know, it says 20. I think the clerk wanted only 20 on there, so that's what she did.
Cut me off again. This is for our West Smith project. As you know, a good portion of this is being paid for through federal funds. So we have certain requirements for testing and inspection, which we normally do on our projects. Difference in this one is because of the federal funds, the testing consultant must hold certain ODOT pre-qualifications. Intertech PSI does hold those qualifications. We got 3 quotes, and these were the lowest. And we worked with them before, so we'd like to proceed.
Okay, any questions?
Move to approve?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 23-120, amend JED contract Southtown LLC. Ms. Marshall?
Thank you, Mr. President. We were working with Attorney Ben Chinaki on this amendment to the JED contract for the City of Medina and Montville Township Joint Economic Development District for the Southtown Center LLC project, which is a retail development project at 5827 Worcester Pike Road. As you know, our program is voluntary, so any property owners that would like to join can fill out the petition to join and bring that parcel into the JED district. This one is a little bit different, which is why we're having the public hearing at the council meeting, because when the attorney reviewed, he said it wasn't quite clear if the original property owner had agreed to being part of the JED expansion district. The parcel is zoned commercial, but it was used for residential purposes. So just to make it out of abundance abundance of caution, he said, you know, let's have that public hearing as well. But the property is now owned by the Southtown Center LLC, which is Mike Rose, and they have approached the JED to join. So this request is to amend the JED district by bringing that parcel in, and the amendment has been provided to Mr. Huber, so this is subject to his review and approval. I think he reviewed it. Mr. Huber?
And also, the public hearing you mentioned is tonight, that we're going to talk, it's put it out there in the public before council meeting.
That's correct. We did, we had to do a 30-day legal notice, which we did that. Also, the township, Montville Township also had to do the 30-day notice, and I think their meeting is tomorrow. And we also we had a meeting with the Montville Township attorney, Trina Devaney, myself, and attorney Ben Shinaki on this issue. So everybody's in agreement with this process.
Good.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and as everybody knows, the JED that we formed years ago has been working quite well. And of course, the whole impetus of the JED is the businesses that locate around the city and the township. Townships only receive property tax, and the money's really not enough there to support the infrastructure and operations of the business that locates there. So this helps out, and we also give grants as part of the JED board to the businesses to help them out with their projects by the money that's raised through the income tax that's levied within the JED. So it's kind of a win-win for both the township and the city, and also a benefit to the business that would elect to join. And again, it's all voluntary. There's no mandate to join the JED. If the business wants to join, great. If they don't do it. But there's a benefit of joining, so that's kind of how it works. So, any questions on that? Okay.
Did Mr. Huber get a chance to review the document, or?
I did.
Okay, so I don't need to say subject to final approval then? Okay. Make a motion to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 23-121, the bids for the Rocky River stabilization at Huffman Cunningham Park, the ARPA. Is this Jansen or Patrick, or both?
I'll take it.
Okay.
This request is to advertise, bid, and award the stabilization project at Huffman Cunningham Park. This was a project that has been on the horizon for a very long time to address the erosion near the Cunningham soccer fields. Basically, West Branch of the Rocky River makes a 90-degree turn, and we've effectively completely lost access to that area of the park now. Our multi-purpose trail that leads people back there is closed off because it's undermined. We've lost over 10 feet of riverbank in that area. Later, at the end of the year last year, we entered into contract with EnviroScience Incorporated to do a site investigation and complete a design and help us with permitting for the project. The design plans are now at 60% completion, and a permit application has been submitted to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So we should have approval on that in the near future, so we wanted to move forward with getting authorization to bid the project. The construction budget is $200,000. There's a detailed estimate that was attached with the request. So we're looking to use ARPA funds for this and hopefully get the project bid and awarded sometime this fall.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 23-122, the courthouse lease. Mayor Hamel?
Thank you, Mr. President. So we've been working for over a year in trying to come to terms for a lease to move the municipal court operations from next door on Elmwood Avenue to the 1969 courthouse with the three white pillars on the front, which was vacated once the new courthouse was completed between the parking deck and the 1969 building. I worked first with Scott Miller in the Medina County Prosecutor's Office, and then of late with Chris Jacob, who took over as the county administrator when Scott Miller retired, and the County Prosecutor's Office, Mike Lyons in particular, and Mr. Huber. And what you have in front of you there is the culmination and what I feel is a fair lease for both the city and the Board of County Commissioners. I will share that just this morning I was contacted about one minor typo that was located already, and that's on page 1 of the lease, section 1.2, paragraph small a. It says, shown on Exhibit A, that should read A and A/B, because those are two different exhibits, and the areas of exclusive use are included in both of those. And I know they're going to take care of correcting that over there. I will also share, I spoke with Mr. Huber as the law director immediately before this meeting. He has had some time to go over it, but would like just a little bit more time, and will be prepared to offer his opinion or any concerns at the council meeting, which, if it passes finance tonight, would be June 26th.
And the judge is here, Judge Werner. You were involved in this process also.
Yes, this is not a project that was rushed into. It's been cooking for 20 years. My predecessor actually began collecting funds under a statute which authorizes the court to collect special project funds, and he accumulated a fund for the purpose of expanding the courthouse. And over the last 20 years or so, there have been several attempts to work out some arrangement for this building since the time when at least one member of this council built the building that was across the street for the current court operation. So they've been working hard for the last 20 years trying to find a way to consolidate the court operations for the county on the square. There are so many efficiencies that will result from having this municipal court positioned next to the common pleas court. If you're interested in hearing about those, just stop over. We'll go over those with you. But very excited that so much effort, time, and careful thought has been put into working through this lease arrangement with the county. We are still collecting that special projects fund. We're working with the city to make sure the funds are going to be there for this project in the long run, and very excited that we are at this point. So on behalf of the court's fully committed to working with the city to make this work.
Thank you. And being involved in the process from before, and I think several members of council have been involved, and I think when we talked about it, the previous attempt to collaborate with the county and being in a new courthouse, which the last estimate we had before it went to a vote was $7.8 million, which I was ecstatic about, because that was the lowest it's ever been. Even in our own special building separately, it was never that low, and it was a collaborative effort. Looking ahead at this one, I can't say with certainty, but it's going to be probably in a range of $9.5 million now. So it's going to cost the city an extra $1.5 million at least to do this, because there's no other options that we have that'll be less expensive or more collaborative, which is disappointing when we had in our hands $7.8 million to do it, and it just poof, gone. So, and going through the process and working with the judge, before we talked about the special project fund has a little over $4 million in it, which is very helpful to the renovation of the building, and he's going to continue to collect that, which will assist in paying for the lease payment under the lease over the 33 years that it is, with extensions, of course, because we have to always remember in our mind that the municipal court, even though it's called the Medina Municipal Court, not only serves the city of Medina, but it also serves 3/4 of the county. So the use of that is much broader than just the city, which is very helpful to that. And I would have to echo the mayor in reviewing the lease and providing comments to the lease over over this process. The county has really, helped and assisted in, coming up with a resolution to some of these problems that we've had. In the language of the lease and in of the allocation of expenses under this lease, which I think the effort is only going to be shown by the use of the community in going to one location with all the courts in one location, because I think that is the biggest benefit that is provided by collaborating with the county and using this facility as a justice center rather than just separate courts, because most people don't understand, when you have to go to court, well, which court am I going to? Now, at least they'll have to go to one location for all the different courts that they may have to attend. Not to say I'm encouraging people to go to court. That is not what I'm saying. But they'll be at one location if you have to, or if it's necessary for you to go to court. So with that in mind, I think we can work out the allocations, the city's share, because I think we talked about 50/50 after the 4 million, how we're going to work it out with the city. We still have to determine from the capital projects fund, from the capital fund that we have, the 301 account, using those funds to pay for it. But this has been, if I remember correctly, a number one capital improvement item on council for the last 20 years, as you mentioned, because we all were involved in the capital, and I think Reggie was on council at that time, and it was at the top of the list.
20 years ago.
Yeah, it was always at the top of the list. And now we finally have another opportunity. Hopefully, this one will go through, but it's going to cost us more money, which is very disappointing to me, but there's nothing we can do about that at this point in time. So, everybody take time and read the lease. We could pass it out of finance. I think if there's any other additional comments, I think it might go to the committee that we established for the final review. I think we probably should do that because Jim's on that committee to make sure there's no other comments or discussions from that. Come back and start the 3 readings at council. And then when we come back from our first meeting after the break, that'll be the final 3rd reading and passage of the lease. So if anybody, has any questions, you can ask the mayor, ask myself, ask the judge, ask Mr. Huber. We've been through it, ask Jim, through the negotiations for a long time. And it was a lot of fun. Yes, right. Any questions?
I will share with the council, Councilman Rose contacted me earlier after reviewing the lease and asked me the question if we had our building official actually go in and look at the structure of the building and if there were any concerns, foundation-wise, leak-wise, things like that. And tell you the truth, we've been so busy trying to get the lease together. We had not. I reached out to Chris Jacob shortly after the call to Councilman Rose, and they're more than happy for Dan to walk through there. So Dan is going to arrange that with Steve Bastian, who is the person in charge of all the county buildings, and Dan will review it and then give us a response to that.
That's good. So yeah, Paul.
My thoughts were, since we're going to be responsible for the maintenance of the building, we should have a basis to start from. We don't want to be fixing something that they should have fixed 10 years ago.
Well, and plus the major item is, if you remember, this went to the ballot, and the citizens want us to locate in that building, to save it. Of course, we want to maintain that look on the square, so that'll be there for many, many years to come, because I think that's an integral part of Medina and Medina history, and of course, the square, the look of the square, with the courthouse and the courthouse pillars. There's been many a picture taken at that place, and I think there'll be many more taken, because it's just the focal point of the square, pretty much. Bill?
I appreciate, Judge Warner, appreciate your history of the, kind of the history of how we got here. And it's important, I think, for the community, the larger community, to understand that this was not something that happened, was quickly hatched. It was a long, long time in the process. And I think it's also, though, important to recognize that initially, when the county began planning, the pillared courthouse that we're talking about moving into was going to be torn down. And really, through that process, I think a lot of recognition needs to go to Commissioner Hudson, who's now Judge Hudson, who was willing to work through that, which enabled us to maintain that building. As President Coyne mentioned, a lot of photographs have been taken there for school kids and other people for decades and decades. But it is interesting to note that that building was initially supposed to be where the old courthouse is, because the old courthouse was supposed to be torn down in the late 60s, and that was going to be the courthouse. And so that's how the pillared courthouse got there, when the old courthouse wasn't torn down. So we have a long history of issues about who's where and what courthouses do we keep, and the courthouse across the street is only 40 some years old, but it'll get new tenants, I think, that serve the community just as well as it has as a muni court, that we will now have. And you can't say it too often, how rare is that collaboration between a municipality and a county, where they can come together, and do something that improves both the service and long-term, the cost. So I think this is a great opportunity for us on a whole number of different ways to address an issue that's been here for a long time.
Great. So everybody take a look at it. I think we really went through the lease a lot and made a lot of comments to it, but if you see something that jumps out that maybe we didn't think of, let us know, but I think we've been doing it enough where we probably lose sleep over it, but I think we should move it out of finance and then move it on to council for the 3 readings, if nobody has any objection to that.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right. I don't think there's any other item to come before council except for an executive session.
I'll make a motion at 7:05 PM for council to go in executive session with conference for the law director of the city involving disputes that the city is subject to, either pending or imminent court action, to include the mayor and the law director.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Motion passes.
We'll be recessing into executive session to discuss the imminent litigation as mentioned by Mr. Shields, returning to finance to adjourn finance, and taking no action of any item discussed into executive session, and then moving on to council. We are in recess.